Hey there, friends. I hope that you enjoy this episode of the Remembering and ReEnchanting podcast as much as I enjoyed making it. I want to take a moment here at the beginning to extend a special offer, an invitation to you, our dear listeners, to join the Remembering course. Our next start date is going to be in middle of March. This is a powerful, deeply moving, and for many people, transformational experience into the heart of colonization, climate change, family histories, ancestors, and so many other critical intersecting pieces. Just visit our website, Sequoia Samanvaya. All the information is in the link below. Hello, and welcome to the Remembering and ReEnchanting podcast. My name is Sara Jolena, and I am your hostess on this sacred learning journey of unraveling, unveiling, and becoming more fully alive at the end of the world as we know it. In this podcast, we offer up to you, dear listener, 3 forms of episodes to support your journey of remembering and reenchanting: conversations with amazing people, storytelling, and mythcasting. This episode is a mythcasting episode where I take a myth that has been around for many generations, told in different ways by different people, and retell it for our times. The myth I am working with today, which I call Bone Seed Song, is informed by the brilliant work of one of my favorite feminist myth keepers, Clarissa Pinkola Estes, in her amazing book, Women Who Run with the Wolves. She refers to this myth as La Loba, or the Wolf Woman. This was the first myth I ever recorded. I am here offering to you my original recording, even though the sound quality is not what I have today, in honor of those first period of time when I was just beginning to do this work of mythcasting. As this was my first, and as this might be your first listening experience with mythcasting, I want to read to you directly from Chapter 1 of The Women Who Run with the Wolves, to give you a sense of how Clarissa Estes herself describes this work of retelling stories. The Howl, the resurrection of the wild woman. I must reveal to you that I am not one of those divine who march into the desert and return gravid with wisdom. I've traveled many cook fires and spread angel bait around every sleeping place, but more often than the getting of wisdom, I've gotten indelicate episodes of E. coli and amoebic dysentery. Such is the fate of a middle-class mystic with delicate intestines. Whatever wisdom or notion I espied on my travels to odd places and unusual people, I learned to shelter, for sometimes old Father Academy, like Kronos, still has an inclination to eat the children before they can become either curative or astonishing. Over-intellectualization can obscure the patterns of the instinctual nature of women. So, to further our kinship relationship with the instinctual nature, it assists greatly if we understand stories as though we are inside them, rather than as though they are outside of us. We enter into a story through the door of inner hearing. The spoken story touches the auditory nerve, which runs across the floor of the skull and into the brainstem just below the pons. There, auditory impulses are relayed upward to consciousness, or else it is said to the soul, depending on the attitude with which one listens. Ancient dissectionists spoke of the auditory nerve being divided into 3 or more pathways deep in the brain. They surmised that the ear was meant, therefore, to hear at 3 different levels. One pathway was said to hear the mundane conversations of the world. A second pathway apprehended learning and art. And the third pathway existed so the soul itself might hear guidance and gain knowledge while here on earth. Listen, then, with soul hearing now, for that is the mission of story. Bone by bone, hair by hair, wild woman comes back, through night dreams, through events half understood and half remembered. Wild woman comes back. She comes back through story. I remember you. That is the feeling you may hear in those moments of surrender when you have been wandering in the desert and you first come upon she who knows. There are many reasons why someone may come to the desert. It may have been by accident. The road of your life simply ended up there. It may have been because your life was no longer working. It may have been because the world you lived in was slowly but surely drying up, the sources of nourishment disappearing. It may have been because you were fleeing the civilization that was warping your soul, causing you to feel exhausted, dry, frail, gagged, muzzled, unaroused, uncreative, stuck, compressed, inert, faltering, domestic, overly intellectual. Internal dryness in the feminine is characterized by feeling without inspiration, without animation, without soulfulness, without meaning, shame-bearing, chronically fuming, volatile, giving one's creative life over to others, life-sapping choices in relationships, that overprotection of the self, afraid to stop and afraid to act and not insistent upon one's own tempo. Maybe a whole group of you went out together. You and the others who saw the uncreativity in rebuilding a home where there was a fire year after year. The compression of rage and fury in the over-intellectual approach to an adaptation report, discussing nothing less than the world turned upside down, the soulfulness of debates debating what is already known, the frailty of the healthcare system, the exhaustion of social change efforts, the feeling of being gagged in the social media spaces that should be places of free expression. The chronic fuming of the millions who are working towards climate resilience, and that one president who denies its very existence. The over-domesticity in bureaucracies poorly designed for chronic disasters. A civilization that has blocked out, muffled, ignored, walled, poured concrete over, fenced off, filled sediment into, caged, dammed, drowned, overgrown, and poorly tended to the wild, which was always existing in its own internal harmony, cannot, by their own ways, that is to say, by the ways of civilization, know how to adapt to the wild when it itself is being moved quickly into a chaos that the wild has never known before. So you, who, however small you may feel, also cannot be bound by such constraints as smallness. And you, however impossible the task clearly is, cannot be defined by helplessness. And you, who after surviving enough storms to become as clear as a reed bending in storm gusts, and you, who surge like the rivers that break through old levees and the storms that laugh as they crash against sea walls. One fine day you left the fences of civilization, and fully entered the wilds of the desert. Now, the desert is not an easy place to find nourishment. If you do not know its rules and its cycles, if you have not been brought up by Pueblo or Navajo or Ranchero, if you do not know how to peel cacti and to move fast when the water comes rushing like thunder down the arroyo. To know the desert is to know where to find the springs, those miracles where water, fresh water, emerges from beneath boulder and sand and stone, as miraculous as a woman in orgasm. So much wetness. But those who have been here before say that if you keep going far enough, beyond the stretches of what you now know, you might meet the old woman who lives in the place that is hidden. The rise and fall of civilizations is well known to her as it is to any who live in the caves that have housed the refugees and seekers of wisdom from the damages and wreckage of such said civilizations. Those cave walls whisper with the echoes of moans and stories. Most likely she who knows would find you, a bit blistered and sunburned, and lead you through sage and browning grasses that all look the same to you. But to her, they somehow form a pathway in the wilderness, a path walked by old women since before time itself knew which way was the past and how to move into the future. You followed her because she was willing to lead you, and besides, what choice did you have? She likes to catch people then when they are falling and don't know how far away the ground may be. The wind of the fall blows away their ego, leaving them uncertain enough to listen. And you follow because she is the old one who knows. She knew the desert fathers, saying to them the poetry in their dreams that they later wrote down. She had no need to write anything down. No, not she who drummed the rhythm of syntax and rhyme into the song of creation. She was made from a wrinkle on the sole of the divine foot. This is why she knows everything. For feet with a close proximity to earth are such sentient beings, regularly telling fingers and heart and mind the rhythms of river and stone and rain. She, La Loba, takes you, all of you, to the hidden place. You know this place. You've known it all your life. Your mother and her mother and her mother knew it. Did they see it? You are not so sure. She who knows has you sit at the back of the cave. It is cool and dark, and both are refreshing. After a while you sense, though with what sense you know not, that there is a river, cool and even somehow sparkling, that runs along the interior edge of the cave, close to where you sit. The river is deep enough that you can easily scoop the water into your hands, and you drink. And as you drink, the water seems to touch the back of your throat, your spine. And you feel its coolness as it travels all the way down into your body. You become acutely aware of the length of your spine as the water flows through you. You don't ask about the quality of the water. Somehow here that question seems out of place. It belongs to another world. The old woman leaves the cave without a word. Somehow you know she is searching for something, that she had found you in the midst of a search for something else. This thing that she's been searching for a long time. If you could see her, you would watch her go down, crawling beneath a low-hanging, gnarly branch, creeping along the edge of boulder to the sage bush, her old wrinkled hands sensing underneath the sage for something. Ah, yes, there it is. She thought she had seen it before you came along. A tooth. And another one. Good. She returns to the cave and squats in the open space between you and the mouth of the cave. She takes out a large bundle next to many other large bundles made of hide and drawn together with gut, and begins to remove white objects. She begins to remember them. Those nearly indestructible bones, reforming them into wholeness, the wholeness of the skeleton. You know the shape, the ribs, the femur, the tailbone, long, the neck shorter than a horse, the skull smaller than a deer. If there was any doubt as to the creature being reassembled in death, the teeth, long and sharp, dispelled it. The canine tooth, the one she has just plucked from beneath the sagebush, still has some dirt. La Loba spits on it, cleans it with her own saliva, places it carefully against the skull. She is sure now. The skeleton of the wolf is complete. She reaches up for another bundle, a smaller one this time, and takes out something that at first you can barely see. It is so small. Next to the pelvic bone, just inside, she places the seeds. She stands over the criatura, raises her arms over it and sings out. That is when the rib bones and the leg bones of the wolf begin to flesh out and the creature becomes furred. La Loba sings more and more the creature comes into being. Its tail curls upward, shaggy and strong, and La Loba sings more and the wolf creature begins to breathe. And still La Loba sings so deeply that the floor of the desert shakes, and as she sings the wolf opens its eyes, leaps up, and runs away down the canyon. You don't think. You follow it. You run as fast as your two legs can carry you. You run after that great creature who has returned to life, for that is what you know is the right thing to do. And then, somewhere, perhaps it was a slant of the full moon that caused it, the silver sleek outline of wolf transforms into lithe, lean body of naked woman, around your age. And she is running, as if running naked in its place is the most natural thing for her to do, which it is. And you laugh with the wonder of it, except your laugh sounds strange to yourself, more oohs than you're used to. And you look down and realize you run on 4 legs, not 2. That somehow at some point you too have been transformed. You look around, yes, your pack is still with you, all with long snouts and tall ears and leaping legs. For a while, the transfigured woman and you run together, kin of the wild. Then the woman went in her own direction, as is the wont of women who know who they are, and you and your pack begin to find your own way, learning as you go the way of the wolves. Together, you learn to hunt as a team, and to play, and to sleep soundly, and to climb to the top of the high mesas. You watched Snake, the way she slithered her spine against the sand, going under the bushes. You learn to crouch low under boulders and trees. You learned how much of the desert happens underground. The long roots that search out water for that brief, glorious, fleeting bloom. The perfection of the small. From desert plants you learn the way to catch rainwater and make it last. To be a creature of the night as well as to enjoy the warmth of the sun. To wiggle your spine on the soft ground as you played with your packmates under the softness of the early morning sun. To gnaw on bones, playing with them, even when you scratched them, they would not break. Even if you chewed on them, they would not be destroyed. Even if you tossed them against the rock, they would not break. They would still be the bones. You slept soundly with only the safety of your community and your own knowledge of your territory to protect you. To climb to the top of the high rocks, the most secure boulder, to stand on as you to know what was the most secure boulder to stand on as you surveyed the vastness that became increasingly familiar, to lift your head up your head and howl. Sometimes you would watch, perhaps from behind a boulder or under a bush, as the 2-leggeds walked through your territory. Their skin was dark, and their eyes were narrow, and their hair long. They woke early, greeting the sun with song. They knew where to gather herbs and food and other medicine, always leaving behind something beneath the plant they took from, always giving back to she who gives. Sometimes at night you would watch their fires and their storytelling and their songs. Sometimes you would pierce their music with a howl, the way a needle pierces thread, weaving a wider tapestry with the whole of the human-animal kingdom. Every time you howled, your tailbone low to the ground, your spine outstretched, something cool and sparkling rushed through you, like a rushing stream of water from the base of your tail to the tip of your snout. It felt so clearing, so cleansing, leaving your mouth with a taste you still couldn't quite place, except that it was the same taste as the water that ran through the cave. And then one day, your pack found itself in a familiar territory, though you were not aware of trying to get there, or of trying to get anywhere in particular. You had nowhere to go, for you were at home wherever you were. But suddenly you were at the hidden place again. And there in the cave was the old woman. She was doing the work given to her by the woman who knows, the work that all like her do, discerning the timing of living and dead, and which was which. Only the whole creatures would be sung over, brought back to life. For while you and your pack stood at the entrance of her hidden place, watching, had you not been there before, even you as wolf would easily have missed it. Then she gestures you in, having you sit around her a circle. She took down a bag. She pulled out the bones. It was a raven. And then she took down another bag. She placed those bones right next to the bones of the raven. You cock your head and whimper a bit as you recognize the shape. A human child. She places her sacred seed in each creature. And then she looks at you as if giving you a choice. But the choice was already made. You made the choice a long time ago when you chose the wild. You and your pack lower your heads. She who knows begins to sing. Your pack raises its head in unison. You howl. Raven grows muscles and feathers. Child grows muscles and that soft, fragile human skin so ill-suited to protect from the scrapes and scratches that surround it in this life. You howl, and the creatures breathe. You howl, and the creatures move. You howl, and you don't know for sure, but it seems as if the song of she who knows is growing louder and louder. The child sits and stands. Delighted, you stop howling, and the song also stops. The child does not run. She instead turns to you, reaches out her hand unafraid, as if to pet your neck or scratch your ear. You reach out a paw to her, only to see it is a hand, a human hand, your hand. You look around. Your pack of wolves has returned to their human form, none entirely sure if they like the switch or not, and you find yourself embracing the child, a bit awkwardly at first, your body no longer used to arms and long fingers and short nails. But soon enough you remember what it is like to hold a human child. And she who knows, where did she go? For you can't see her in the cave. There's only the twisting undulation pressed into the sand, where just now she was crouching, much akin to the indentations made by a large snake. The crow speaks to you then, as crows sometimes do, at least those crows who have flown over the river beneath the river. Now you know how to sing over the bones, raven cawed. You hear her scratchy voice in your open heart. You now must go and gather the bones of your people, the bones and the seeds and the songs. Gather them into your medicine bags and keep them. You know now the difference between bones and plastic, between seed and refined sugar. You know how to fight, and you know how to be clever and avoid a fight. You know how to stand your ground and how to flee to safety. You know how to be loyal and protective and caring for your kin. You know you belong in this place. You know now the ways of the wolf, at least some of the practices of the wild. The great work before you now is to learn to understand what around and about us, and what within us must live and what must die. It is for you to take up this work, to sing over, to enchant the bones, to call back the dead and dismembered aspects of life itself. To live as both creation mother and death mother, you must work to apprehend the timing of both, to allow what must die to die, and what must live to live. And with that, Raven flies to the top of the cave beyond where you can see and returns. She gives you a small bag of seedlings. It is not as large as the ones the old woman had. It fits easily, softly in the palm of your hand. You tie it around your neck, feeling within it the softest murmur of the heartbeat of the root stock, the seed corn of the world. You can almost hear a voice whispering from the cave itself. Now if one has the rootstock, the seed, the origin point, any havoc can be repaired. Live streams can be resown. Fields can be rested. Hard seed can be soaked to soften it, to help it, to break open and thrive. Sing, says Raven, she who travels between the worlds of light and dark. Sing from the light of life. Sing from your internal seed. As the world, as your world knows it, cracks and breaks and falters, sing over the bones of those whose living brings life. Your pack looks at one another, entirely uncertain about the momentous task of this request. The child looks up at you, reminding you of something you some days want to forget. Your heart nods in assent to Raven, who caws and flaps her giant black wings, her body lifting and defying gravity yet again, and you stand. She flies out, and you, holding the child's hand, follow the winged messenger, walking slowly on these two legs out of the cave. Thank you so much for listening to the Remembering and ReEnchanting podcast. If you are enjoying what you are hearing, please subscribe, share, and leave us a review. I am always happy to hear from you, dear listener, to continue finding ways to connect the disconnected and go deeper on your own journey of remembering and reenchanting with your communities, your organizations, and your families. I invite you to check out our courses and other community offerings via the Sequoia Summon Via website. You can also follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn, though I must admit I spend much more time working with really amazing people than crafting social media. If you want to work with me one-on-one or bring me to speak at your organization or family office, you can find out more at sarajolena.com.